Hi. Rodfather 916. For years, I've reviewed reality shows, usually black based reality shows, the Real Housewives of Atlanta, and then later on Potomac, and did and reviewed other shows online and on through my blog. I like reality show. I've loved reality show from the moment I saw Real World on MTV, where people of different backgrounds, different colors, were locked into a house. And after a few weeks of living with aliens, the truth surfaced, as it always does. Issues of race, issues of who's gay, who's not gay, and how they should act. And I like that about reality show. It spawned many conversations all over the world, particularly the one in San Francisco, where you had someone living in a house with someone who was HIV positive at the time, where people were still afraid of people who had the virus. And it was very touching, and it told America that this person who has AIDS is not a monster, he was just a human being. So I like reality TV. There are certain things you learn about reality TV, and some of it's salacious, like Basketball Wives, where Evelyn Lasanda, I can't think I'm mispronouncing her name. I loved her as a character, but she was the most violent person on the show, throwing bottles, jumping off tables, and I didn't care for that. I liked where people got to learn about each other. The problem with a lot of reality TV, it's either salacious, there has to be fights or sex, and unfortunately, in the case of the Real World, later in the years, it became about sex and less about discovery. Perhaps the directors or the producers felt that they had done it and wanted to move on. So, a lot of discussion right now will be talking about the reality network Bravo. Um, Reality TV, or The Housewives in Bravo, has been around since 2006. And the premise of the show was based on Desperate Housewives. But that was 2006. This is 2021. And the franchise is running out of steam. There are housewives all over the world. One of my favorites was the Real Housewives of Melbourne. Um, but it's the franchise is running out of steam, and you can tell because they're doing an all star thing coming up, and you can always tell they're running out of steam. Um, but I want to go through the Bravo shows, hopefully briefly, and I'm going to mention the one that just should go away, starting with the original 2006. Orange County needs to go away. It's it typifies what happens at a lot of Bravo shows where there are people with nothing to do or little to do having the same arguments episode after episode after episode. Last year was interesting because of COVID, and one of the stars, Bronwyn, her children, like many children across the country, were just shocked, as we all were, about George Floyd. And they protested in good old Orange County. And people questioned why they were protesting, white kids, and if they would understand. And she struggled because a lot of housewives that couldn't relate to her, and she couldn't relate to their not being involved as the rest of the country was picketing. They were talking about Porsches and who slept with who and who was divorced to who and the basic fodder. But I think Orange County needs to go. The next one's difficult for me. It's Atlanta. Atlanta is where I got my start. Atlanta is where most of you know me from, doing silly podcasts and making fun and light of the reviews. But Atlanta's run out of steam. It's more of the same. You know, last season was based on the dungeon and Cynthia Bailey's bachelor parties where people had sex, and there was no more to it. There were fights, but like Orange County, it's been done. I'd like to see the cast change. I'd like to see on all the shows some integration. I think I've been to Atlanta several times. There are Hispanics, there are whites, there are other people that should be introduced. Now, of course, the people at Bravo is trying to resuscitate this program. I mean, by far, it was the highest rated show of all the Housewives. But it's been failing miserably. Even when they brought back Nene, that didn't. Nene helped it spiral even more. She was a horror to work with. You know, she at her worst, she wouldn't do scenes with other people. She would walk out. Something that no other Bravo star would be allowed to do, and sort of accelerated its slow demise. There's rumors that Candy may just walk away. You know, clearly she does need the money, and the ratings are fading really soon, really quickly. I'm sorry, I can't talk today. Moving on to Beverly Hills. They did integrate Beverly Hills last season. They brought Garcelle Bouvier, who was recently in Coming to America 2. And yet, the arguments are most like the other shows where they spend weeks and weeks talking about, episode after episode, talking about the same type of argument. Just goes on forever. Bye. Potomac is rapidly following Atlanta. Spent a whole season talking about the fight between the two women and what other people thought and lawsuits, and there wasn't much else to it. But there's potential in Potomac, but I think it's going to take new cast members. And I think it could fade much sooner than Atlanta. Last year, it was good in ratings. I think it exceeded Atlanta on a few Sundays. But it's more of the same. Again, we're talking about 14, 15 years. New town, old formula. Dallas is low rated, but Dallas has integrated. And Dallas has been something interesting. Also, I think it needs new casting, but it has had added new people of color to the show. I mean, it was bland. I love you. I love you too. That's a cute dress. Yes, that's a cute dress. The only thing really kept it going was Leanne Locken, who was evil. Evil, I tell you. Scary at times, but entertaining always. However, with the adding of Carrie Brittenham, who's Hispanic, took the diva down, the number one diva of Dallas down, because she couldn't deal with this Mexican. And she said it several times, much to her demise. This season, they brought Tiffany Moon, the first Asian, and she brings a new dynamic to the show. In fact, during the last reunion, I thought she held her own, being the newbie. She is in a medical feel. Her husband's a millionaire, owns different hotels, but she's always worked, and she struggles with how she was brought up. She's never been able to relax. She's always worked, so fitting in is difficult for her. However, there are certain cast members who have gone online and made faces like this on TV, very offensive, and they're working that through. And one of the cast members, Brandy, is the person who did this, struggling. Has a lot of guilt, thinking Tiffany is mad at her, but they've made peace. But these are the type of conversations that make TV interesting. The rest of the cast, I almost say jettison everybody except Tiffany and Carrie. Um, it's low rated, but it's got to do something quick. Excuse me for a second. Then we go to New Jersey. New Jersey has been the basketball wives of the show. There have been fights, hair pulling, people going to jail, the whole 9 yards. Teresa's been around since the beginning. This season has been fairly good. However, we've seen it. Once again, fights that same fight, last several episodes. They need a new stat, and they need to get rid of Teresa. Love you, but it's time to go. The sleeper this year was a brand new show, the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City's. Its day-to-day ratings are very low, but people don't watch it when it comes on. They record it, making this show one of the highest and most recorded shows on television, especially on Bravo. And it features a Pacific Islander who was arrested for fraud recently. And then we have a black lady who is a Pentecostal minister who married her grandfather. There are a lot of interesting backstories in this small town of Salt Lake City. Mormons, disaffected Mormons, and there are different layers of this town, and we're seeing behind the curtain, and I think it's got life. I don't know what's going to happen to Jen, the Pacific Islander who may be going to jail for fraud. Not sure what's happening to that, but I think that's worthwhile. And finally, we want to talk about what I consider the gold standard of all the franchises. It's been around a long time. Most of the cast members are there. And it's going to be a show that I'm going to review. The Real Housewives of New York. The Real Nice Housewives of New York, for me, is the gold standard of the franchise. It doesn't have the ratings of some of the other shows, but you have a cast most of the cast is intact. Ramona Singer, 64. Sonia Morgan is 57, who may have had too much plastic surgery this year. She's maybe taken it a bit too far. Then you have the Countess, Luann de Lesseps, the former Countess, whose life has been upside down. And then you have, of course, you have a new person in Leah McSweeney, who replaced Bethany. Leah last year breathed new life into this show of 50-something women who are rediscovering and developing new lives from divorce and financial crisis and alcoholisms and going to jail. Luann, telling the officer, "I'm going to kill you." That was good. The Countess lost it. She was drunk. She was going to kill a police officer in Palm Beach, Florida. And, she had to eat bologna sandwich with nothing on it in jail. uncountess-like behavior. But these women are mature. They're not white women with nothing to do. They're all, for the most part, successful in their own right. They're self-made. Leah McSweeney is 37. Everybody else is old enough to be her mother on the show. My only criticism of New York is, in a city where there are more minorities than Caucasians, where are the people of color? Well, this year we have one in the place of Ebony Williams. She's a broadcaster. She's a lawyer. She has her own podcast. She dates millionaires, you know, people who own teams, and she's her own woman. And I see, we've only had one episode, but I see clashes of cultures. I mean, I've already seen one in Sonia basically saying she has fishes of all colors. So this is going to be promising. And again, these women, you know, you don't have a show with several episodes based on a single argument or senior event. These women fight, and they fight hard. And then they get together. Sometimes it's tense, but it's over. As we are in some of our friendships, you know, we feel strongly about something, and we have these arguments, but at the end of the day, we're still friends. And so I'll be reviewing this. Now, I realize, to my viewers, who are mostly black and people of color, will not participate in New York, and it's a shame. I don't want to be limited to a color, like only reviewing black shows. But I'm seeing a change taking place at Bravo, although it may be too little too late. There is a possibility for other shows. I often wonder why they are afraid to integrate the shows, the reality shows, unless it's, you know, people fighting, the only show that I appreciated with fighting is because it was completely different was Mob Wives, because we got to learn these are people who were in crime families. Their family members are in prison for life. Women who were taken care of by the mob. So I found it interesting, and the passion and attention and what they had to do to survive. And so I found that show interesting. But outside of that, Bad Girls Club and the other ones where people fight, or Love and Hip Hop, nah. You know, it's more of the same. But I hope you stick with me. Unlike today's review, was going up to 20 minutes, one of my longer videos, I hope you stay with me with New York. I promise that my reviews will be less than 7 minutes. Some of those who watch the YouTube reviews, sometimes the reviews are longer than the show itself. You know, the shows, minus advertising, are about anywhere between 42 and 43 minutes. The reviews have gone for an hour because people tell you step by step by step. I'm going to do recaps, and hopefully I'll be funny and entertaining. So I hope you stay with me. Race is really important to me. I think the reason it is my family's biracial. My children are biracial. There are Caucasians, Latinos, Asians in my family. And we talk about race. And how you learn about someone else is through conversation. There are oftentimes going to be misunderstandings, as it would with any friend. There'll be misunderstandings, things you heard wrong or took the wrong way, or based on how you felt that day. But I think conversation is healing. I encourage people to talk about race calmly. That's how we learn. Something I was beginning to say, and I want to go back to it, is I wonder in some of the shows, particularly the Bravo shows, I think these producers don't have friends of color. They may have that one, I have that one black friend, or I have that one Asian friend. I can generally tell if a person is comfortable with people of color. It's not something I point out like, you don't know any black people, do you? I can tell. You know, you worried about me saying something, you know. But you can tell if a person, and this is true of black people, a lot of black people stay in their own communities, people stay in their own circles, people feel comfortable and nervous, but these tight circles, due to these tight circles, that's where stereotyping, begins. Well, they're all like that, but they've never spoken to a Latino. Oh, they're all like that. They know of one gay person in the family, and he's a nice person. He's regular like everybody else. And I'm happy that people feel comfortable talking to me about race. It warms my heart. There are misunderstandings. I just had one with a friend of mine who recently, he lives in the Minnesota area, and he believed that in his own way that black people like rioting and burning and looting. And he struggles the fact that there are white people burning and looting. And one gentleman who was given 12, I think he got several years and a fine of $12 million burning down one of the police stations in Minneapolis. But the only way this can be healed is through conversation. Not an afternoon special, you know, Asian like you and me. I think this is the only way it's going to be, is having conversation. And sometimes that conversation is difficult. Sometimes that conversation makes you uncomfortable. Sometimes that conversation makes you angry. Because you can't believe that the person thinks this way and they're your friend or someone you know or someone you work with. But I think you have to understand from who they are exposed to. Someone said the more you know, the better you are. I may be saying that wrong. So this ranks as one of my longest videos. I hope you've hung in with me. Once again, if you like what you hear or you find it somewhat provocative, hit that subscribe button. Hit it. If it's something that you really enjoy, share it with your friends. And of course, I like hearing what you have to say. Not everybody agrees with me, and that's okay. I like that. Because sometimes through disagreement is how we learn. It's how we learn about each other. Learn something different. Someone asked me, why do you watch Fox News and Newsmax? It's difficult for me. Difficult for me. But I need to know what they're saying. And every once in a while I do learn something from Fox News. Because you can't learn from the choir. You're all hitting the same note. But it's a possibility that note could be wrong. So, ending this, the longest video I've made since I've had this channel. Rodfather, wishing you love, joy, and happiness. If you can see this video right now, that may mean you've made it through 2020 and hopefully and beyond. Continue to wear that mask. Please get vaccinated. It's not over. We will know in the fall. Because in the summer, people don't get as sick. But when it gets cold, people do. Remember we had 50, 60, 70,000 people a day getting sick back in the fall and all the hospitals were closed. It could happen again. I take nothing for granted. So I have masks all over. I wear them. And I think I'll probably wear them for life the way things are going. But I'm not going to go. I'm going to move on. Hit that subscription button. Continue to smile. Smile goes a long way. Rodfather, 916, in Sacramento, California.